Dubai is a city built on the promise of absolute security and impossible luxury for the global elite. The Wafi Mall stands as a monument to this wealth, protected by state-of-the-art surveillance and armed guards. However, on a quiet evening in April 2007, the glass and gold of this desert oasis were about to be shattered by a ghost. The air was filled with the scent of expensive perfume and the silent hum of power. Two high-performance Audi S8 sedans suddenly roared through the pedestrian walkways with a terrifying speed and precision. They did not slow down as they approached the massive glass doors of the luxury shopping complex. Instead, they accelerated, smashing through the reinforced entrance in a hail of glass shards and twisted metal. This was the beginning of a violent and perfectly timed heist that would redefine international crime forever. The vehicles skidded to a halt directly in front of the Graf Diamond storefront, which was the primary target. 8 masked men dressed in dark tactical gear emerged from the cars with the disciplined movements of a professional military unit. They did not waste time shouting or brandishing weapons at the stunned tourists who were frozen in place by the sudden and chaotic violence. Every single second was already accounted for in their plan. Using heavy sledgehammers, the intruders smashed the display cases with a rhythmic and calculated force that suggested hours of rehearsal. They ignored the cheaper pieces of jewelry, focusing only on the highest quality diamonds and luxury watches available. Every second was accounted for in their internal countdown, as they filled their bags with millions of dollars in untraceable and extremely valuable assets. The sheer efficiency of the theft was breathtaking. The entire operation took less than 170 seconds, a window of time so small that security could not respond. The mall's sophisticated alarm systems were ringing throughout the marble corridors, but the thieves were already moving back toward their waiting vehicles. They moved with a collective intelligence that made the surrounding security guards look like amateurs in a professional and high-stakes game of tactical warfare. The Audi sedans roared back out through the shattered entrance, leaving behind a trail of destruction and millions in lost revenue. They navigated the crowded streets of Dubai with a reckless confidence, weaving through traffic as if they knew every blind spot in the city. Within minutes, the vehicles were abandoned in a nearby residential area and set on fire to destroy all potential DNA evidence. The flames consumed their physical trail. Investigators arriving at the smoldering remains of the cars found absolutely nothing that could lead them to the suspects' identities. There were no discarded masks, no fingerprints on the steering wheels, and no witnesses who could provide a clear description. The thieves had vanished into the humid desert night, leaving the Dubai police and the international community in a state of profound and total shock. They were chasing shadows in the dark. This was not the work of a local street gang or a group of opportunistic criminals from the surrounding region. The level of tactical planning and the sheer audacity of the hit suggested a far more sophisticated and global organization. International law enforcement agencies soon realized they were facing a network that operated with the precision of a clock and the coldness of a professional army. A new predator had entered the arena. Interpol began to link this robbery to similar high-profile strikes in London, Tokyo, and across the luxury capitals of Europe. The name Pink Panthers was officially adopted after a heist in London, where a diamond was found hidden in a jar of cream. This was a nod to the classic film, but the reality of these criminals was far more dangerous and far more complex. They were ghosts with a very specific and lethal set of skills. The value of the jewelry stolen from the Wafi Mall was estimated at $15 million, making it one of the largest. This single act of aggression established the Pink Panthers as the most formidable diamond thieves in modern history. They had turned a secure desert fortress into a personal playground, proving that no amount of technology could stop a perfectly executed and highly disciplined military-style operation. The world was now on high alert. Behind the masks and the high-speed getaways was a dark and complicated history that stretched back to the Balkan Wars. To catch these ghosts, the authorities would have to understand the ruins from which they emerged and the loyalty that bound them. The Wafi Mall Blitz was just the opening act in a global campaign that would span several decades and several dozen sovereign nations. The hunt for the Balkan Panthers was officially on. The global media became obsessed with the cinematic nature of the Pink Panthers, often portraying them as romanticized and clever outlaws. However, the reality for the insurance companies and the luxury jewelry brands was a terrifying and very expensive ongoing crisis. Every time a new store opened, the owners wondered if the Balkan ghosts were already watching and measuring the response times of the local police. The fear was real and very deep. The origins of the Pink Panthers lie within the smoke and debris of the Yugoslav wars during the 1990s. This was a dark period defined by ethnic conflict and the total disintegration of a once stable European nation. In the ruins of cities like Belgrade and Cetinje, a generation of young men learned that survival required extreme measures. They were forged in a crucible of violence and absolute chaos. Many of the core members were not common street criminals, but highly trained veterans from elite military and special police units. They had spent years mastering the arts of tactical movement, urban camouflage, and high-speed extraction under intense combat pressure. These men possessed a level of discipline and technical expertise that far exceeded the capabilities of any standard civilian law enforcement agency in the world. When the wars ended and the sanctions began to crush the local economy, these soldiers found themselves without a purpose. The transition from the battlefield to the civilian workforce was nearly impossible in a region devastated by international conflict and hyperinflation. They saw the glittering wealth of Western Europe as a legitimate target for their specialized skills and their growing sense of economic desperation and deep resentment. The structure of the Pink Panthers was intentionally designed to be a horizontal and decentralized network of independent criminal cells. There was no single headquarters or supreme commander that the police could target to dismantle the entire operation at once. Instead, they relied on a system of loose associations based on shared military history and deep regional loyalties from their youth. This made them nearly invisible to traditional investigators. This decentralized model allowed the group to operate in over 30 different countries simultaneously, without any direct communication between the various crews. Each cell functioned with a high degree of autonomy, selecting their own targets and designing their own tactical flight plans. They were bound together by a code of silence that was forged in the blood and fire of the Balkan trenches. Betrayal was simply not an option. They approached the world of luxury jewelry heists with the cold and clinical mindset of a military intelligence operation. Every target was subjected to weeks of intense reconnaissance to identify the specific vulnerabilities in the alarm systems and security rotations. They viewed a high-end boutique not as a store, but as an enemy fortification that required a surgical and high-speed tactical breach. In their homelands of Serbia and Montenegro, these men were often viewed with a complex mix of fear and secret admiration. Some locals saw them as modern Robin Hood figures, who were reclaiming the wealth stolen by the West during the long years of war. This cultural protection allowed the members to disappear back into their communities after a successful job, effectively hiding behind a wall of silence. The network began to expand its reach far beyond the borders of Europe, targeting the high-stakes markets of Asia and the Middle East. They traveled on high-quality forged passports, moving between international borders with the ease of seasoned diplomats or wealthy businessmen. The world was their battlefield, and the diamonds of the wealthy were the prizes in a war that never truly ended for them. Their psychological resilience was perhaps their most dangerous asset in the field of professional and high-stakes international crime. Men who had survived heavy artillery fire and prolonged urban sieges were not easily intimidated by private security guards or silent alarm systems. They maintained a level of absolute calm during the execution of a heist that allowed them to make perfect decisions under extreme and mounting pressure. The recruitment grounds for the Panthers were often the military barracks and the harsh prison systems of the former Yugoslav republics. This ensured that every new member was vetted for their toughness and their commitment to the group's secret and lethal objectives. They built a brotherhood of professionals who valued competence and technical skill above all other traits in their dangerous and profitable world. Every successful job was analyzed and deconstructed to improve the tactics for the next operation in their ongoing global campaign. They were early adopters of new technologies, using encrypted communication and sophisticated jamming devices to neutralize the defenses of the most secure vaults. The Pink Panthers were not just thieves. They were a highly adaptive and evolving tactical machine that outpaced the slow-moving law. As the shadow of the Balkan ghosts began to cast over the luxury districts of the West, the world realized a change. The transition from soldiers to shadows was complete, and the most successful jewelry heist network in history was now fully operational. They were ready to challenge the security of the globe, one diamond at a time, with a precision that no one could have ever anticipated. The hallmark of the Pink Panther organization is the absolute elimination of the element of chance through exhaustive and surgical preparation. They do not merely walk into a target. They dissect the entire environment like a complex biological specimen under a high-power microscope. Every security camera, every motion sensor, and the exact rotation of the local police patrols are mapped with the cold precision of a professional military intelligence officer. One of their most ingenious and subtle tactics involves the manipulation of the physical space surrounding the target to ensure a clean exit. In one famous instance in Biarritz, they painted a public bench directly in front of a jewelry store on the morning of the heist. This simple act ensured that no bystanders would be sitting there, accidentally blocking their path or providing a clear view of their escape route. They are masters of social engineering, often entering high-end boutiques dressed in tailored Italian suits and driving expensive luxury vehicles to blend in. These men speak several European languages fluently, allowing them to pose as wealthy businessmen or international tourists from the Middle East. They use this professional facade to conduct final reconnaissance from within the store, identifying the most valuable stones and the weakest display locks. The execution of the heist itself is a masterpiece of synchronized movement that usually concludes in under 90 seconds. They understand that the local law enforcement typically requires at least 3 to 5 minutes to reach a scene after an alarm. By operating within this narrow window, they effectively neutralize the response of the authorities before the first siren can even be heard in the distance. Speed is their primary weapon, but they also utilize heavy-duty industrial tools to achieve their goals with brutal and efficient force. They have been known to use hydraulic spreaders and heavy sledgehammers to breach reinforced glass in a matter of seconds without any hesitation. This smash-and-grab technique is not a sign of desperation, but a calculated method to overwhelm the security staff with sudden violence. The legendary moniker of the group originated during a high-stakes investigation into a 2003 robbery of Graff diamonds in London. British detectives discovered a massive blue diamond hidden inside a jar of expensive face cream belonging to a suspect's female companion. This clever hiding place was a direct homage to a scene from the original Pink Panther film, leading Interpol to adopt the name. Disguise is a fundamental pillar of their operation, allowing them to change their physical identity multiple times during a single and complex mission. They often utilize professional-grade wigs, prosthetic noses, and even female clothing to confuse the descriptions provided by terrified and overwhelmed witnesses. By the time the police arrive, the suspects have already transformed into different people, merging effortlessly back into the urban crowd. Traffic control is another area where the Panthers demonstrate their superior tactical understanding of the modern and congested city environment. They often use stolen scooters or motorcycles to weave through heavy traffic where large police cruisers are physically unable to follow them. In some cases, they have even used stolen delivery trucks to block narrow streets, creating an artificial traffic jam that prevents any immediate pursuit. Once the diamonds are secured, the logistical network of the group moves with incredible speed to transport the goods across international borders. They have established a sophisticated web of fences and black market dealers who specialize in the rapid laundering of high-value gems. The stones are often recut or reset in new jewelry within 48 hours, making them nearly impossible for the authorities to trace. Minimal violence is a key component of their professional philosophy, as they prefer to rely on the shock and awe of their entry. They maintain a strict discipline during the heist, focusing entirely on the objective, rather than engaging in unnecessary conflict with the store staff. This cold and businesslike approach ensures that the robbery remains a surgical operation rather than a chaotic and unpredictable crime scene for everyone. Their ability to disappear into the background after a job is the ultimate proof of their high level and professional training. They do not leave behind DNA, fingerprints, or any digital trail that could be picked up by the massive global surveillance network. The Panthers are the ultimate ghosts of the criminal world, moving through the centers of power without ever leaving a footprint on the polished marble floors. While they are early adopters of new technology like signal jammers, their core success remains rooted in the raw and physical skill of the operators. They train their bodies for the physical demands of the sprint and the high pressure of the getaway driver's seat. This fusion of old-school military grit and modern criminal sophistication makes them the most successful and durable heist network in the entire world. The global law enforcement community finally realized that they were not fighting a series of random jewelry heists, but a coordinated campaign. Interpol moved to create a specialized unit known as the Pink Panthers Task Force to centralize all intelligence from over 30 different nations. This was the start of a massive digital dragnet designed to catch the ghosts of the Balkans who moved through international borders with ease. Hunting these men was a nightmare for detectives because the suspects did not have permanent addresses or traditional criminal records in the West. They moved like shadows through the high-end districts of Paris and Tokyo, utilizing stolen identities and forged travel documents to stay ahead. Every time a task force identified a potential suspect, the individual would vanish back into the chaotic and protective environment of the Balkan Mountains. The tension escalated when the Panthers struck the heart of Tokyo's Ginza district, a place known for its extreme surveillance and high security. They escaped on motorbikes through the crowded streets, leaving the Japanese police in a state of absolute humiliation and deep professional frustration. This hit proved that no geographic border was safe from the reach of the Balkan network and their highly disciplined tactical execution. In the glamorous French Riviera, the Panthers executed a heist at a luxury boutique in Saint-Tropez before making a daring escape via speedboat. They vanished into the Mediterranean blue, mocking the naval blockades and the helicopters that were sent to intercept their high-speed retreat toward international waters. The audacity of using the sea as an escape route highlighted their superior understanding of logistics and their total lack of fear. However, the constant pressure from Interpol began to create small cracks in the otherwise perfect operational security of the various Panther cells. Investigators started to use advanced DNA analysis and international databases to link physical evidence from multiple crime scenes across different continents. They realized that even ghosts leave a biological trail, and the massive amount of data began to point towards specific families and military units. The first major breakthrough occurred in Monaco when a routine traffic stop led to the arrest of a high-ranking member of the network. He was carrying multiple forged passports and a collection of high-end watches that had been reported stolen in a previous London robbery. This single mistake allowed the task force to peek behind the curtain and identify the hidden connections between the operators and the fences. Interpol also began to follow the financial trails, monitoring the movements of large sums of cash between European capitals and the Balkan region. They targeted the money laundering hubs that the Panthers used to convert their stolen diamonds into clean currency for their quiet and luxurious lives. By choking the financial supply lines, the authorities hoped to force the operatives out into the light where they could be captured. The hunters began to use psychological warfare, leaking information to the media about internal betrayals and secret informants within the ranks of the group. This was designed to create paranoia and mistrust among the various cells, breaking the bond of silence that had protected them for decades. The Balkan Code of Loyalty was suddenly under fire from an invisible enemy that used information as a lethal and sharp weapon. A coordinated series of raids in Belgrade led to the capture of several key logistics experts who were responsible for the group's global travel arrangements. These men were the architects of the false identities and the safe houses that the operators relied on during their long and dangerous missions. Their arrest was a significant blow to the network's ability to move through international borders without being detected by the censors. Despite these victories, the majority of the Pink Panthers remained at large, continuing to strike targets with an almost defiant and reckless energy. They viewed the international dragnet as a personal challenge, a high-stakes game of cat and mouse that tested their skills to the absolute limit. Every successful heist was a statement that the ghosts were still in control of the global stage and the diamonds. The tension within the international task force was at a breaking point as the number of robberies continued to climb in luxury centers. Politicians and corporate executives demanded faster results, but the Balkan Panthers were moving faster than the bureaucracy of the modern justice system could handle. The hunt was becoming a war of attrition, where each side was waiting for the other to make a single and fatal mistake. Investigators began to narrow their search to a few specific towns in Montenegro, where many of the known members were born and raised. They realized that the key to dismantling the network lay in understanding the local geography and the social ties that bound the men together. The dragnet was getting tighter, moving from the glittering boulevards of Paris to the rugged and defensive mountains of the Balkans. The walls finally began to close in on the legendary architects of the Pink Panther network as the decade drew to a close. High-profile arrests in Rome and Monte Carlo stripped away the layer of invincibility that had shielded the Balkan veterans for 20 years. These men, once untouchable ghosts of the military ruins, found themselves facing the cold reality of maximum security prison cells across Europe. Modern technology proved to be the ultimate nemesis for a group that relied on physical speed and simple theatrical disguises to escape. The global implementation of artificial intelligence and advanced facial recognition software made it nearly impossible to move through international airports undetected. The digital eyes of the 21st century began to see through the wigs and prosthetics that had once fooled the human observers. Despite the capture of several founding members, the Pink Panthers evolved from a specific group into a dangerous global criminal ideology. Younger generations of Balkan youth, inspired by the myths of fast cars and diamond heists, began to adopt the same tactical blueprints. The name became a brand for any well-organized crew that utilized the smash-and-grab methodology with military precision and high-stakes ambition. In the quiet towns of Serbia and Montenegro, the legacy of the Panthers is etched into the local economy and the social fabric. Stolen wealth flowed back into these regions for years, funding local businesses and creating a strange kind of criminal prosperity in the aftermath of war. However, the pressure from international law has forced many former operators into a life of permanent hiding and paranoia. The global jewelry industry was forced to spend billions of dollars to upgrade their security infrastructure against the threat of the Balkan ghosts. Reinforced glass, DNA spray systems, and time-locked display cases became the new standard for luxury boutiques from New York to Hong Kong. The Panthers effectively changed the architecture of high-end commerce, making the shopping experience feel more like entering a secure military bunker. Hundreds of millions of dollars in diamonds and precious gems remain unaccounted for, likely hidden in secret caches or laundered through complex networks. These stones have been recut and sold to unsuspecting buyers, disappearing into the legitimate market, where they can never be recovered by the law. The true scale of the wealth stolen by the Pink Panthers may never be fully understood by the international authorities. Interpol continues to maintain an active project dedicated to tracking the remnants of the network and their various spin-off organizations. While the frequency of the massive, cinematic heists has decreased, the threat of a sudden and violent strike remains a constant concern for security. The ghosts have learned to stay deeper in the shadows, waiting for the moment when the world becomes complacent or distracted by other crises. The story of the Pink Panthers is a haunting reminder of how the remnants of war can transform into a global criminal enterprise. It serves as a case study for intelligence agencies on how elite military training can be repurposed for high stakes and organized theft. The world of international crime was forever altered by the soldiers who decided to trade their rifles for bags of rare diamonds. As the sun sets over the rugged peaks of the Balkan Mountains, some of the original Panthers are likely still out there. They are living quiet lives in remote villages, watching the news of the latest global heists with a sense of professional detachment and pride. The era of the Wafi Mall Blitz may be over, but the myth of the Balkan ghosts continues to haunt the elite. Ultimately, the Pink Panthers proved that no fortress is truly impregnable when faced with human ingenuity and a total lack of fear. They exploited the vulnerabilities of a globalized world, moving through the cracks of a system that was never designed for such predators. Their legacy is one of broken glass, high-speed chases, and the eternal allure of the perfect and impossible diamond heist.